Good afternoon, my name is Gabriela, and today I will start our group presentation on the impact of climate change on sustainability of airlines industry. In this presentation, we will go through a short introduction. We will discuss about the physical, transactional and liability risk. We will also discuss about the action taken by the UK companies, also about the foreseeable consequences and actions, and reporting on climate change activities. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in global temperatures and weather patterns, primarily driven by human activities such as the burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial processes. Since the late 19th century, Earth's average temperature has risen by 1.1 degrees Celsius, leading to significant environmental consequences, including rising sea levels, increased frequency of extreme weather events, and threats to biodiversity, according to NASA 2020. Global efforts like the Paris Agreement aim to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050, emphasizes the transition to renewable energy and sustainable practices. Our presentation explores the impact of the climate change on UK airlines, focusing on three main types of risks: physical, transitional and liability risks. We will examine how airlines such as British Airways, EasyJet and Ryanair are being affected by these risks and the steps that management teams are taking to mitigate them. Physical risks are driven by disruptions such as extreme weather, while transitional risks arise from regulatory pressures, including the UK government's commitment to net zero emissions. Liability risks include legal and reputational consequences if airlines fail to meet the environmental targets that are accused of greenwashing. We will also discuss about management strategies such as carbon offsets programs. And in our presentation, we will also highlight the importance of the climate adaptation for the airline industry. Climate change presents numerous challenges for the UK airlines, and these challenges can be categorized into three main areas. Physical risks. Physical risks from climate change, such as extreme weather, are having a growing impact on UK airlines. For example, heat waves and storms are causing more flight delays and cancellations. EasyJet had to cancel multiple flights during the 2022 heat wave due to the aircraft performance issues in high temperatures. Rising sea levels are also a significant concern, particularly for coastal airports such as London Heathrow, which faces long-term operational risks. Additionally, increased frequency of storms can damage infrastructure and can affect both short and long-haul routes. These physical risks demand that airlines invest in infrastructure improvement and enhance their operational resilience. Transitional risk involve the regulatory and market changes that airline must navigate in response to the climate change. The UK government has committed to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, which means airlines need to adapt to the transition to the sustainable aviation fuels. They also need to explore new technologies like electric aircraft. British Airways has made a significant investment in SAF and is researching electric planes as part of its sustainability strategy. Carbon pricing has also become a significant concern, increasing the cost of operations. Liability risks arise when the airlines fail to meet the environmental standards or are accused of greenwashing. For example, Ryanair faced backlash after being accused of making misleading claims about its environmental initiatives. This led to reputational damage and public outcry. Shareholder actions and legal challenges are becoming more common as regulatory frameworks become stricter. Customers also demand transparency in sustainability efforts. So therefore, airlines must be aware of these risks and prioritize clear and honest communication about their environmental impact. Legal and reputational risks can severely impact the profitability and the market share, making it essential for the airline management to avoid making false or exaggerated sustainability claims. To mitigate the risks associated with climate change, UK airlines are implementing a range of management strategies. British Airways, for example, has introduced carbon offset programs that allowed customers to offset their flight emissions. Airlines are also investing in electric and hybrid aircraft technologies to reduce long-term carbon emissions. Collaborating with governments and stakeholders, it is critical for airlines to meet regulatory requirements and to develop sustainable practices. By focusing on sustainability, airlines can not only reduce their environmental impact, but can also enhance their brand reputation as leaders in green aviation.
Since the first conference in 1972 in Stockholm, when the basis of climate change was established, there were adopted different other initiatives, policies and common principles by the United Nations as a guide and duty for the whole world and all governments. Among these, the most relevant for the airline industry is the Kyoto Protocol, which took place in 1997, setting emission reduction targets for developed countries, the EU Emissions Trading System, EU ETS, in 2005, a cap-and-trade system for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which includes aviation, and the Paris Agreement from 2015 to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius with efforts. To sustain the international initiatives mentioned above, the UK government elaborated and launched useful programs, such as the Jet Zero strategy, aiming for net zero emissions from UK domestic aviation by 2040, committing to use SAF with a mandate to have at least 10% SAF of fuel mix in the UK by 2030. The UK Emissions Trading Scheme, UK ETS, launched in 2021 to replace the EU ETS post-Brexit, to limit emissions and to allow trading of emissions allowances. Also, Flight Path to the Future issued in 2022, outlining the government's vision for a clean, modern, innovative and efficient aviation sector over the next decade. Ultimately, Brexit-related policies to ensure continued air traffic rights between the UK and EU. In response to international climate change policies like the Paris Agreement or the Kyoto Protocol, and also to the national governmental policies aforementioned, the UK airline industry has taken several significant actions over the last decade, such as commitment to net zero emissions to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050, implementation of sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, with the main goal of using fuel mixed electric and hydrogen powered airplanes to reduce carbon emissions. At the same time, modernizing the fleet is equally important. Companies investing in research and development to find new eco-friendly aviation technology, such as Ryanair's new Boeing Gamechanger aircraft, producing less emissions. In terms of UK companies, the most representative of the airline sector, among others, are EasyJet, Ryanair, and British Airways. These airlines try to have a positive impact on climate change, although not always deliver this. EasyJet invested in newer, fuel-efficient aircraft to reduce fuel consumption and emissions, contributing to overall reduction objectives. Also, EasyJet tried to offset carbon emissions from all flights since 2019. Similarly, Ryanair has committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050 to align with the Paris Agreement and the aviation industry's 2050 initiative. Ryanair has adopted the SAF initiative to operate 12.5% of its flights on SAF by 2030, reducing life cycle carbon emissions by up to 80%. Ryanair has invested $22 billion in the new Boeing Gamechanger aircraft. Similarly, British Airways committed to achieving a 15% reduction in net zero carbon emissions by 2030 and 40% by 2040, and adopted the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Initiative as well. Modernizing its fleet, British Airways saved around 60,000 tons of carbon dioxide annually. However, as seen in the slide's statistics, there are also some negative aspects. For instance, British Airways, after 2 years of efficient carbon dioxide reduction, registered a significant increase, which almost projected it to similar values as those of 5 years earlier. Also, the statistics show that these 3 UK companies are leaders in the global airline industry at carbon emissions, polluting the most.
So I'm going to talk about key trends for sustainability in the airline industry. Sustainability reports from airlines are becoming more full and detailed. Specific metrics on water usage and waste management, fuel efficient, and carbon emission are frequently included in these reports. A lot of airlines are integrating the Science Based Targets (SBTi) initiative and the Global Report Initiative (GRI) into their sustainability reporting. This element contributes to preserving uniformity and comparability with the sector. By 2050, airlines hope to have achieved net zero emissions. They have set high goals. This entails utilization of SAF more frequently and making investments in cutting-edge technology like hydrogen and electric aircraft. So the foreseeable consequences and action for the next decade. In hotter climates, airplanes may need longer runways for takeoff as a temporary rise. Fuel consumption and operation costs may rise as a result of this. Elevated flight delays and cancellation may result from altered weather patterns, which may include more frequency and intense storm. This has an impact on customer satisfaction and operation costs in addition to schedule issues. Stricter rules designed to lower carbon emission are probably in the works. To abide by these rules, airlines will need to make investments in more fuel-efficient aircraft and sustainable aviation fuels. Continue the actions for the next decade. As a part of the commitment to achieving net zero emission by 2050, British Airways, for instance, has already begun making significant investments in carbon removal projects and sustainability aviation fuels. Significant investments in resiliences and adaptations measures may be required in light of potential impact of rising sea levels and increasing flooding on airport infrastructure. Depending on how different regions are affected, there may be a shift in travel pattern as a result of climate change, with potential drops in demand for some routes and increase in demand for some others. Using SAF can help cut carbon emission dramatically. These fuels are essential for reaching sustainability targets and future regulations. Requirements and airlines such as British Airways are already investing in them. Adding more fuel-efficient aircraft to the fleet can help cut down on emissions and fuel use. This also includes adding more aerodynamic features and some more efficient engine to already existing aircraft. You can reduce fuel consumption and emission by implementing strategies like shortening taxi time, optimizing flight path, and better ground operation. The airlines can lessen the environment affected by participating in carbon offset programs. This entails funding initiatives like reforestation or renewable energy projects that absorb or lessen carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Airlines can stay ahead of regulatory change and take advantage of shared acknowledgement and resource by collaboration closely with governments. Regulatory bodies and industry partners, standards and innovations across the industry can also be sparked by collaboration.
There are several climate reporting frameworks that airlines can use to accurately and transparently report their climate change. Some of the most common frameworks include Global Reporting Initiative, GRI 305 emissions, which focuses on greenhouse gas emissions. The triple bottom line framework that pushes airlines to ensure fair working conditions for employers, reduce emissions by using more efficient aircraft, and achieve long-term aircraft and profitability. The Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure framework that focuses on reporting climate risk in governance, strategy risk management, and metric targets. Airline companies should focus on both quantitative and qualitative data, including metrics such as total CO2 emissions, fuel efficiency improvements, and carbon offsets. Secondly, they should integrate climate reporting with financial reporting with the help of TCFD, which ensures that climate-related risks are recognized and financial risk. They should also ensure active stakeholder engagement through effective communication of progress on sustainability effort and targets. Finally, provide verification and assurance of emissions data by a third party of accuracy and credibility. First, airlines must adhere to environmental laws to avoid penalties and fines, making transparent reporting important. Secondly, accurate and transparent reporting helps airlines attract sustainable finance and investment, since investors are increasingly focusing to assess risk and opportunities. Thirdly, clear reporting can enhance an airline's reputation as a responsible actor in climate change mitigation, improving customer loyalty and competitive advantage. Finally, airlines are carefully to disclose the scope and limitation of their carbon offsetting programs to avoid accusation of greenwashing. Delta reports detailed climate metrics such as emissions intensity per passenger mile and flight segment, along with investment in sustainable aviation fuel. British Airways, on the other hand, has a dedicated website for sustainability reporting. The airline publishes annual reports on its progress in line with the triple bottom line. For instance, transparent reporting on their fleet modernization and transition to more fuel-efficient aircraft, aiming to reduce emission by 15%. Air France, KLM provide comprehensive and third-party verified sustainability reports. The reports strongly focus on their transition plan to reduce dependency on carbon offsets. EasyJet roadmap aims to cut carbon emissions per passenger by 78% by 2050. The company invested in a fleet renewal with Airbus Neo aircraft, achieving a 15% fuel efficiency improvement. It also contracted its safe supply for the next 5 years and is collaborating in hydrogen engine development. EasyJet plans to reduce carbon intensity by 35% by 2035. Ryanair, on the other hand, has committed to using a significant proportion of SAFE to reduce CO2 emissions per passenger by 10% by 2025. The airline operates a young fleet of fuel-efficient Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. Ryanair is actually involved in industry focused on sustainability and is committed to reducing its environmental impact. To conclude, the effects of carbon offset infrastructure challenges, market shift, increasing operational costs, flight disruption and regulation show how the aviation sector must innovate and adapt in order to maintain and climate change resilience. Several climate reporting frameworks and standards that airlines can use. Best practice in climate reporting are important in ensuring compliance and stakeholder confidence. British Airways, Ryanair, Virgin Atlantic and Delta Airlines have implemented best practice. British Airlines can both lessen the effects of climate change and establish themselves as industry leaders in sustainable aviation by implementing carbon offset programs. Work together with the stakeholders, educate and involve customers. Research and development, optimize operational efficiency and invest in climate resilient infrastructure and implement proactive steps.